Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I am here with Quaglia. She is another friend that I met here in Damanhur, and today we're going to be talking about courageous action and indifference, and maybe even some of our free will, which is all required to really manifest the life of our dreams, to really live our ultimate potential, our ultimate life. And so I'm so excited to welcome Quaglia today. Welcome.
Thank you, Nikki. It's so good to be here and to share with you and to share with everyone.
Beautiful. And I know that you mentioned that you wanted to start by sharing how you came to Damanhur, what brought you here, and the journey that arrived you to this spiritual community where you now live full time and you've had a baby here. And yeah, I would love to, and I know that you were living in California similar to me before finding Damanhur as well. And yeah, so I'd love to hear a bit about that story because I don't think I know how it all happened.
Yes, so before moving to Damanhur, which is a spiritual eco community in Italy, I was living in San Francisco. And people often ask me, how did you get from San Francisco to Damanhur and living in this small town in Piemonte? And actually it all started at Burning Man. I know that this is also something we have in common. So I was going to Burning Man and camping with a group called the Heebie-Jeebie Healers. It was a group of healers, and I was doing healing work, and we were doing healing exchanges as well. And a friend of mine from the camp named Papa Bear, he is trained in Esalen massage. So he gave me an Esalen massage and was telling me about this place, Esalen, and at a certain point took me to Big Sur to meet this community. It's also a community space for learning, for growth, for healing. And the place really resonated with me, and so I've gone back there many times since then. And one time I was visiting a friend. I wasn't taking any courses, and there was a woman from Damanhur who's one of the main artists. She's actually the art director for the temples, and she was teaching a stained glass art class there at Esalen. So I met her at the art barn, at the art studios there, and I thought, oh wow, look at these stained glass pieces. They're so beautiful. And that was it. That was our interaction. Then I saw on the ride board at Esalen, there's a bulletin board for people who need synchronic rides going to and from the community. And she needed a ride to San Francisco the same day I was leaving. So she came with me in the car. And for about 3 or 4 hours, we were in the car together, and she was telling me about Damanhur, speaking in English, basic but very clear English, because it was before I knew Italian and was fluent in Italian, which I am now. And so she basically told me that there's this place in Damanhur, that's where I live with my community. We use different techniques of meditation and spiritual practice to receive visions and make visionary art in underground temples to celebrate humanity and humankind and our diversity and the beauty of life on this planet. And she told me about the communities, about how in Damanhur they live in communities and are very connected with nature as well, that there's organic agriculture, that there are cooperative businesses, there are schools within the community where the children can learn very much in connection with nature and with their true nature. And that there's all of these different aspects that were very alive within me and in my past that I never really knew how to put together. And I thought, this place has everything. I really need to go there. And so after this, long ride to San Francisco, I left her at the Golden Gate Bridge with, a friend who was picking her up. And she asked me if I could give her any gas money. I said, oh, no, no, no. And she looked at me in the eye. She said, you're an angel, and we're going to see each other again. And so a few years after that, I was receiving like a big push from the city itself of San Francisco to leave and to travel and to move and to do something else. And I was very resistant to it because I loved my life there. But it was a very strong push. And at a certain point, I just decided to trust in that. Like, okay, I feel like the universe, the signs, the synchronicity are telling me that it's time to leave. And at the time, I was very much involved in Buddhist practice. I was living at the San Francisco Zen Center and in a deep Zen meditation practice. And I also have Buddhist ancestors. My great-grandmother founded a Buddhist temple in China in the Pure Land lineage. And so my idea was to leave San Francisco, seeing as how it was time to leave, and go on a trip around the world for a year or two, starting with going to Southeast Asia to go to Buddhist temples in Thailand and Indonesia and lounge on the beaches and drink coconuts and enjoy life in this way. But first, I packed up, what was left of my possessions in my car. I drove to Texas to see my family. I went to the regional Burning Man event in outside of Austin in Texas. And I was meeting people. I was telling them about my journey. And one of the people that I met said that, yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I'm traveling. And so, I ask for messages, for directions about where to go next. And it always arrives. And that night, it was the night of burning the big effigy. So there was a big fire, big celebration. I was fire dancing. Everything was just really magical and alive. It was the high point of the entire event. And I looked up at the sky and I saw someone had released fire lanterns into the sky. And so they were drifting and they made an arrow that was drifting in a certain direction, like 7 or 8 fire lanterns. And I was like, okay, there's an arrow of fire in the sky. I think this is my indication about where I'm going next. So I took out a compass. I happen to have a compass with me, which is very useful to travel with. And it was pointing east. I'm like, no, that's wrong. The fire arrow in the sky is pointing in the wrong direction. Thailand is that way. But it just kind of stayed with me. I went to my parents' house. I took out a map of the world. I took my pendulum. I was doing dowsing to see where my next destination would be in my travels. And the pendulum said Italy. And I said, no, I'm not going to Italy. It's July. I've been to Italy. There's too many tourists. The euro is stronger than the dollar. I'm going to waste all of my money. It's too hot. So I had all of the reasons to not go to Italy. But there in the middle of Texas, I started getting all of these messages. Like everyone I spoke to started talking about Italy. We're seeing magazines with Italy on the title. And so the direction was very clear. I needed to not go to Thailand, but go to Italy for some reason. And I decided to just trust in that. I bought a one-way ticket to Rome. I remembered this woman that I met at Esalen who lives in Damanhur. I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to Italy and I have no idea what I'm going to be doing, I might as well go and visit Damanhur. And so I was traveling through Italy. I'm a fire dancer, so I was doing fire dance performances in the street and volunteering on organic farms around Italy. And then I made it to Damanhur. So that's why I came to Damanhur for the first time.
Wow. So yeah, this so goes along with our theme of like courageous action and also synchronicity of when you read the signs. And as you know, I had a few episodes ago, I did have an episode all about synchronicity. And this is a perfect example of like all the signs, all the moments pointing to one direction, like go there. And even though it's illogical, like it doesn't make sense, like she said, the euro stronger than the dollar, like why would I go there, right? And I feel like I had a similar situation when I left Western medicine. Like it was not logical. Like I just invested like so much money. I think it was like $250,000 of all the schooling
And I spent all of that time, like 8 years to become a doctor. Like, why would I leave that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, no one could understand it. But sometimes everything is showing us it's time for a new chapter. It's time for the next adventure. And I think the people who live extraordinary lives are the ones who take those big leaps and jumps without knowing all the answers. And similarly, the same happened to me when I found Damanhur, where I had like 3 retreats planned. There was so much going on. There was like this 3-month program. And within that 3 months, I already had so many plans. I was like, why would I go to live there for 3 months when like my schedule's quite full? And then things started canceling themselves. And ultimately, it's like you just decide, like, okay, if this door is opening for me, am I going to choose to walk through it, even though I don't know what's on the other side? And I think, like, that's the beauty of life. Like, that's the life adventure. Like, go see where the path leads. You don't need to know the end point. And what's crazy is sometimes, even though you know the end point, you don't actually know how you're going to get there. And I think this leads us to our next topic of indifference. And it requires us to, if we really want to manifest, realize, create at a high level, you can't know everything. You can't know how it's going to unfold, especially if you want it to unfold in the best way possible, because our mind is so limited. It'll try to create scenarios, whereas there's like infinite possibilities that your mind can't even think of. And the way to be able to say yes to opportunities is to not have that attachment to the past or your expectations or how you think things are going to work themselves out to be. Because if I was attached to the fact that I had just invested so much money to become a medical doctor, I'd never be able to leave. And I know plenty of colleagues in the medical field who felt that way. I had tons of people reach out, be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. Like, I so want to leave. It's like, so then why not? Why not leave? Why not leave to then go to what really is your destiny? Because I could have never known that I would go on the journey I would have went on by making a big leap like that. And sometimes it just happens. Like, similarly, there were events, like I said, that canceled themselves or that helped that path happen. But if we stay attached to the outcome we think, or even I work with clients around love too, sometimes they're attached to a specific person. And I'm like, no, think about the divine union or the love that you want without being attached to a person, and trust the person will rise to the occasion, or it may be someone you have never even met yet. But you don't want to stay attached either way. You don't want to forcefully end things that could beautifully evolve, just like you don't want to stay attached to someone that may not be the right fit for you, right? So it's really about living each moment, reading the signs and synchronicities, seeing what you're feeling in that moment, and then making the decision from that place. And so what would you say about indifference on your path and how it's served you?
Thank you, Nikki. I think that's really so key in taking any kind of action, but especially those courageous actions that are really life-changing, that are really irrational, that are really big leaps into the unknown. And so, yeah, I think in order to take the action, there are different components. First is recognizing the signs and the messages that come from within ourselves and from outside. Not only recognizing them, because sometimes we see them, but we don't want to, so we look away. And so, it's about me seeing the signs and also registering them, and also trust. I think trust is also a key component in the whole puzzle, because it gives me that feeling of, okay, relaxing into what the flow of life and the flow of synchronicity is, where it's moving me. And indifference, it's a big concept, it's a big idea that's also present in Buddhist teachings and also present in the Damanhur spiritual path, and I feel it's a very universal aspect of life as well. And so it's about non-attachment. It's about non-attachment of the results of my actions. So it's not about just, recognizing the signs, recognizing the direction, taking the action, taking those big, courageous actions, but also not being attached to what happens after that. Because the important thing to do is for me to act, for me to make the choice, for me to make the step. And I'm going to make mistakes. That's just part of being human. I'm going to step in the wrong direction and trip and fall, and to not be afraid of that, because it's always better to take a step, to take an action and make a mistake than to stay where I am and not do anything and not take any action, because it's action that it brings us into the flow of synchronicity that is always moving through our lives, that is always moving through the universe, this interconnection and flow of events that eventually takes us on an evolutionary journey. So I can make a choice, and then the result can be completely different from what I wanted it to be. But instead of getting sad and depressed about that and going back to where I was and stopping all the actions in my life, I can just trust in that and say, okay, this is what it looks like after I took this big leap. It's not what I thought, but it has something for me to teach me. And so indifference is also about what is it that I expect from life? What is it that I want from life? And what I'm doing and what I'm intending to manifest and what I meet. Is it my own personal satisfaction and pleasure and immediate gratification of what I want? Or do I want to live evolutionary journey to grow, to learn, to expand my soul's experience in this human body? So if we look at it from this evolutionary perspective, some things that can seem like negative events, bad luck, things not working out, things failing, are actually steps towards this evolution, this path of evolution that my soul is on. And just staying in that space of openness, of acceptance, of being open to whatever lesson there is, then gives me the possibility to then take a next step that might be closer to what it is that I want, what it is that I desire, what it is that makes me happy and comfortable in the world. And so it might take falling down a lot of times before I really rise up into my full being, my full happiness and realization.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's about perspective. So when we're on the journey to manifest whatever this ultimate goal is, like even for me, I remember one of my ultimate goals was to live in Malibu, right? And like the journey there, it ended up happening so much faster than I thought. And I had to try out living at all these different places. And I feel like even like the magical moments that happened to get me there, like even where, I just started that month making a higher salary from my work, not salary because it's as an entrepreneur, but just I was receiving more money through my work at the same time that I signed the lease. And so it was like this flip. I had to take the action, even though like my bank account was like illogical. It's like I didn't even have all the money for the deposits. But something was like, no, you're meant to live here. And so I just moved forward. I kept taking the next aligned decision, forgetting about what was in my bank account. And then the money came in. My application was approved. Like it all worked itself out. And so it required that action. I wasn't thinking like, oh, well, what if it doesn't happen? I was just like, it is going to happen. And I was taking that action to get there. But then a whole other life and timeline opened up for me when I like moved to Europe, for example. And even similarly, to get to a visa, to get to Damanhur, I had to take an action that for me felt like I had to go against my own pride. And for me, it was the action to create like a GoFundMe account. Because I thought like that is ridiculous. Why would I create a GoFundMe account? Like I don't have a disease. Like I'm not like dealing with hospital bills. Like to ask people to fund me to like continue my spiritual education feels like a luxury. And so there was a pride aspect of myself that felt like I don't want to have to ask for help. Like I had done everything so much on my own. But then guess what? People gave me money. Like I had one client give me $1,000. I had a couple friend that had gotten married in Italy, and they were the catalyst for how I came to visit in the first place. They gave me $1,000. So my whole 3-month trip when I first had lived here was funded for me, but I had to take an action that made me a little bit uncomfortable. And I had to really swallow my ego to do that, but it worked out for me. Right. And when we look back at like the journey to get to the end goal, we don't know. We see how it all makes sense, where we thought like, oh, that must have been a failure, but it wasn't. It was a redirection. or, oh, that didn't work out. Similarly, it was redirecting us, or if that relationship or that situation or even that business venture or business in that way, it didn't work out, was because we were meant to experience it in a higher, more evolved way, or one that was really sustainable, or one that would be more in alignment with what we truly wanted or our highest potential. Because I find that if we don't fail, if things don't sometimes come to a dismantling, then we think, oh, it's working like this, I have to stay here. I have to do it like this. I have to continue on this path. But sometimes the dismantling and everything kind of falling apart is exactly what you need in order to make a different choice or try something in a new way. And there was something else you were sharing about, oh yeah, with the action bringing you into that synchronic flow. I always tell clients, like, it's an energy leak if you don't actually make a decision. If you stay in the confusion and limbo, it's such an energy leak. You leak energy. Your mind is constantly occupied. It's better to make a decision and take an action, and then you can always change course depending on the outcome. But it's best to like invest and use your free will in one direction and just go there, take a few steps, see what starts to shift and unfold. Because in that indecision, it's like we're stuck. I feel like we're in quicksand and we're wanting an outcome, we're wanting energy to shift or move, but it can't because we haven't yet chosen a direction to go. So we're like wobbling around energetically. That's like what it looks like to me. It's like we're wobbling around trying to decide where to go. But if we just actually step in one direction, make that choice, take that action, a whole bunch of new events or energy or situations or invitations or opportunity may come into the space because now the energy is different. And so, yeah, that's like the number one thing. I feel like if you feel stuck, you're not sure, you want to take action, just choose one thing and go with it. And then you'll see. And you can always make the other decision at a later time, but just go and pick one thing. Yeah. And so, you know, you mentioned earlier that you maybe wanted to talk a bit about free will. And yeah, and just to actually tie that last piece together. And I feel like taking that one action when you're not sure and you're wobbling, like that really helps you also to get out of the attachment, because it's like, just see what's going to happen. Like a lot of times people are fearful of what might happen or what might not happen. And like that living in fear is a bit paralyzing. Whereas if you go with this like adventurous, like, I wonder what's going to happen, or like, what if the best possible outcome happens? Like, what if that? And then getting into that frequency and making the decision from there. It's like, what if my dreams really do come true? Like, what's the decision I'm going to make? And if I was like ahead in the future and I was going to look back, what's the decision that I would want to make, knowing that everything came true? And I didn't have to fear anything not happening or anything not coming to fruition. And make that decision from that like abundant place. Take the action from that abundant place. Like, what's the action that feels most exciting, that gives energy, that also can help us move forward?
Yes, free will is a very big key in the Damanhurian spiritual perspective. It's something that we all have the potential to live and experience as human beings. And it means really living in complete and total alignment with our soul, with our soul's desire. And without any of the conditioning from our family, from our culture, from the education that we've had, just really being in a pure space of action, of choice, of direction. And it's actually very rare that any of us human beings live in free will in our lives. And it's something to be aware of and cultivate. Can I expand that time and energy and effort that is a true expression of free will? And so what is free will, we might ask ourselves. And so I kind of see it with a sort of visual metaphor. For me, it's being in free will means having a 360-degree perspective of who I am, where my life is going. And so that means seeing in all directions, even behind me, even to the side. And I feel that as human beings, as modern culture, we're limiting our free will more and more, also because we're limiting our vision. we spend so much time in front of screens, in front of phones, in a car, in a windshield, and we're always looking forward. And so when we have a vision that's limited to this, very narrow range, then our free will is limited, because what my potential paths are, what can I see if this is my world? Where are my directions? Where are my choices? I can go in this direction, or I can go in this direction. And so it might feel like I'm exercising my free will, because instead of going there, I'm going there. But then there's all of this around me. There's even I could go here, I could go here. But I'm not even aware of that if I don't have my eyes open and my capacity for free will and expression. And so to enter into this capacity of really living from a place of free will in those key moments of decision, of life changes, of evolution, I need to be able to see it all around me, maybe even up, maybe even down. And I'm a dancer, I'm a dance facilitator. I also do a sacred dance practice in Damanhur. And my dance practice really helps me with this, to be embodied in this openness of perspective. Because when I'm dancing, I'm moving backwards, I'm moving on all levels. Sometimes my arms are closed, sometimes I'm on the floor doing floor work. And so, physically, visually, I have all these different perspectives on what I'm experiencing in that present moment. So this is something that I invite all of us to do. It might not be through dance if that's not your perspective, but it could be something as simple as going from home to work on a different road than you usually take, and opening your perspective in that way, or changing a habit. If I usually eat with my right hand, I eat with my left hand. And doing these little kind of games. It's like little games and little challenges we can give ourselves. Say, okay, how can I bring myself more fully into the present moment, living in the moment from my power, to then make choices, courageous choices and actions that take me on an adventure, on the adventure of my life.
Yes, beautiful. And this idea of free will is really our greatest superpower as humans. So if you want to be in your superhuman potential, it is about free will, which means that conscious choice in every moment, because we come here as like a piece of the creator, as that divine spark to come into human form to then create and live life any way we desire. And even if you are someone who believes in destiny, and I believe that our destiny is a mix of fate and free will. So your free will always has a choice in your destiny. It's like not a guaranteed thing that you arrive to this space no matter what. If you have the potential to do it, you actually have to take action and participate in your life and make the choices and the decisions so that you arrive to that place, because you can also decide in any moment not to do that. You can decide whatever you want. And I think that's so key to remember, because I find that oftentimes when people find themselves in a challenging situation, they feel stuck or in a victim energy. And if we remember we're creating every single moment, we're manifesting in every single moment, the power returns to your hands to remember, oh, right, like I'm creating this, so then I can choose something different. With my free will, I can decide to go to a different place, move here, create this business and this, whatever. And it's really all your free will that's deciding everything in every moment. And so use it wisely. And I feel like in the bonus content, we're going to go a bit deeper into supporting you on how to create even more from free will, how to become even more present in the right now moment, to take those courageous actions that get you into the flow of synchronicity, so that your life and your manifestations and your creations happen with even more ease and grace. And so with that, Quaglia, where can people find you online if they want to connect with you?
If you'd like to connect and continue a conversation, I have a Facebook account and also an Instagram account that I can share with you.
Yeah, beautiful. And so we'll be sharing all the links below.
And if you're curious about Damanhur, spiritual community where I live, where it's also very connected, There's a website that we can share as well.
Yes, exactly. And so thank you so much for being here. We'll see you inside the bonus content, and bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.